So this is a presentation on paper and other writing surfaces. Paper was a very important invention for communication, which spread all over the world. And the importance of paper is the ability to spread ideas and culture, and it played an important role in spreading religion. Once paper was invented, there was a much less expensive method of writing religious manuscripts. But before paper, there was various materials that were used as writing substrates: clay, bone, leaves, and animal skins. Clay tablets were used around the 31st century BC, about 3,000 years before paper was invented. And cuneiform was a writing method from Mesopotamia, and this is where modern-day Syria, Turkey, and the Iran-Iraq border is. And these clay tablets were used to record business and trade, temple activities, and it was also used to write stories, myths, and personal letters. Also, bones were used in China, and these are called oracle bones, used to predict the future. And this was written, what you see here is written on an ox shoulder bone, and sometimes also you'll see them on turtle shells because they were flat and large. So inscribed were questions on the bone, and a special diviner, someone with special knowledge, would come and with a heated metal rod to heat the bone, and the way the cracks would appear on the questions would predict the future. And but about the same time that the cuneiform tablets were used in Mesopotamia, next door was Egypt, and Egypt was using papyrus paper, and you probably are familiar with that. And so that's an aquatic reed that grows near the Nile River. It's a woven plant fiber laid down like horizontally and vertically into sheets, as you might recognize. And this was used throughout the Mediterranean. Another type is animal skins, which you might are familiar with: parchment and vellum. So parchment is a specially prepared tan skin of animals, such as sheep, calves, and goats. Another type is a finer quality parchment called vellum, from young animals. But today, there are new materials that are called vellum and parchment, but they're plant-based. So these were writing substrates that were used before the invention of paper. But printing was already being implemented on fabrics for textiles around the 4th century BC, and paper was invented in the 1st century. But over time, paper got better. Printing larger sheets turned into books, and Buddhism also promoted printing, and it spread along the trade routes, silk trade routes. And with that, the technology spread into the Middle East and then to Europe. So the Asian papers, like the Japanese washi that you find in the store, you might be familiar with the term washi, or maybe you will be now. So washi is just a Japanese name for paper. And you'll see they use the inner core of plant fibers, and it's processed and beaten. These fibers are very long, and makes the paper very strong. And you can see here that they're very, very thin. So a couple common types that you see at the art store is kozo, which is a mulberry tree. Gampi is kozo and gampi are the most familiar you might see at the art store. So these Asian papers, these Chinese papers, were traded to the West, but Europeans wanted to make their own. So making Asian paper wasn't possible because they didn't have the plants. The plant fibers were not available in Europe, but they had rag. So rag in Europe is basically like the clothing off their back. So there's different types of rag, and linen, there's cotton, there's hemp, but there were problems with these the cotton because of the seeds in the fiber. Hemp was a kind of a lower quality, so linen at the time was the type of rag that was used to make paper at the time. But so these were cut up, and there were a lot shorter fibers. And this is a paper mold that you're looking at. That so this the rags would be beaten and put into a vat with water and strained, diluted and strained through these paper molds to create sheets of paper. So this type of paper, similar to what you're using, has shorter fiber, and so they're a little bit thicker than the Asian papers. So So you see here something called a decal edge, and the kind of paper you have is machined with cut edges rather than a decal, but we can tear them. Special tearing methods, which we can go over later, can recreate this decaled edge or the handmade look. So you can see here the decal is made because of the paper mold. The edges along the paper mold aren't sealed so tight, so the paper pulp kind of extends out irregularly, and you see here it's a little irregular and not straight. And also you'll see the watermark for some art papers you see here on the top, and that's because woven into the screen is the logo of the paper mill. And so you can recognize that with some papers. So paper was made by hand until the invention of the paper machine. And I gave you a couple videos to take a look at through the process. So the paper machine was made in the 1800s, which significantly reduced the expenses of materials and labor compared to animal skins, and allowed communication to spread easier. So one thing that I wanted to show you is you might recognize when you're buying paper what is pounds and what is GSM, right? So when you're looking at art papers, you might have to decipher what those mean. So GSM is grams per square meter, and pounds just means, well, GSM tells you how dense the paper is. And in the United States, paper is categorized by this weight basis. So you see the picture on the left, or the illustration on the left. Americans use weights like pounds, and so this is a measurement of the weight of a ream of paper, which is 500 sheets of paper. So if you look here, this is a larger sheet of paper than this. So 24 by 36 is larger than 22 by 30. Of 500 sheets. So this is both 80 pounds, but if you can think of it, this illustration on the right should be thinner because it's smaller. So you can kind of tell that the way paper measurement is for these by pound, and how it's manufactured in different sizes and dimensions, it can be very hard to compare all the different types of paper. So there are conversion charts. I think that usually art papers are made and written as grams per square meter. And this is more clearly defines how dense the paper is. So this way of labeling paper is kind of like an American way of conversion. So you just have to remember that what we're using is 250 grams per square meter Lenox paper, and the range of weights that you would think about or that you could use is 100 to maybe 300 weight or GSMs. That's basically what you would have to really think about. So so just remember, by the time you're finished with this class, you'll know how that feels. So Lenox is a good good paper for both intaglio and relief. And relief prints, you can use anything as long as it's smooth. So that could be newsprint, like cardboard, fabric, boards, and I just wanted to show you a little bit. So this is an artist, street artist. Her name is Swoon. Here's a wheat pasted relief print. So basically, relief you can print on anything, basically. And for intaglio methods, you just need something soft without too much sizing. And sizing is a type of glue that bonds the fiber together and or creates a surface to draw on. So sizing in watercolor paper, there's a lot of sizing in watercolor paper, and that helps to pool the water on its surface. And in watercolor paper, if you're thinking about it, isn't very good to use, but it's not the best type of paper to use for intaglio unless it's soaked a very, very long time. So the sizing often, or in the originally, would be gelatin, animal gelatin, but nowadays it's a type of a different type of like carbohydrate, plant-based. So again, the best types of paper for intaglio is similar to what the Lenox you have. If you can feel how thick it is and how soft it is, but you can use different art papers that don't have too much sizing. That is rated 100 to 300 GSM. And basically, you'll recognize that over the course of this class. And that's what I wanted to show you about paper.